Our guest this week is Mark Kosoglow. Mark's a huge proponent of coaching solid techniques up front because otherwise, the first way somebody does something will be the way they do it forever. Why? Because it's comfortable. And after that, change is really damn hard. Mark also thinks that more is the lazy manager's better. Make more calls, send more emails, you know the drill. But Mark doesn't believe more is better. He believes better is better. So if you're looking for some ideas on how to help yourself and your team get better at getting better, take a listen. Oh, yeah. Let us know you're out there. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, comment, like, repost on LinkedIn. Let's go. Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Benelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. All right, I'm excited to share the conversation with today's guest. It promises to be raw, real, and not rehearsed. He's built and led sales teams at stellar companies like Outreach and Catalyst Software, where he served most recently as CRO. Currently, he's working as an advisor to different companies in areas such as ideation and go-to-market guidance. Another cool fact, he's also the co-host of one of the leading podcasts, if not the leading podcast out there, the leadership edition of 30 Minutes to President's Club. Mark Kosoglow, welcome to Coach2Scale.
What up?
What's up? Let's go. All right, Mark, raw, real, non-rehearsed. Love it. You've been doing this for a while. You're doing it at the highest level. I'm getting into the podcast world to bring solid content to people. You've been doing this for a while. You hear everything under the sun. Mark, what's a myth in this business, sales leadership, sales coaching? What's a myth that you constantly hear that you think's misguided, maybe even complete bullshit?
That you can't be friends with the people you lead.
All right. Tell me more.
I like to be people's friends. I want people to like me. I know that some people think that that's negative. I don't think that it is. I think that it's just my personality type. And I used to try to fight it. The beginning of my sales leadership career, I probably was a little bit more on the hard edge. Fun fact, and I don't know if this is PC anymore, but my dad's nickname at work used to be Little Hitler because he was a smaller guy. He's like 5'7" or so. And he used to have just a little mustache that didn't grow in the full way. And he was pretty tough on people. He worked in manufacturing. And so he earned that nickname. And so I would say I'm the exact opposite of that. Like, I want to be in a relationship with somebody where I understand who they are as a person. And I think that if you do that, there's no way that you can't be their friend. Now, I have friends that I hold accountable, that I communicate clear expectations for, that, I will cease being their friend if they do things that like are anti the agreement that we have in our friendship, right? And I think you can still do all those things with your reps the right way. But I think when you have a different type of relationship with them other than boss and employee, like I never say that, Sean Gentry used to work for me. I always say I worked with Sean Gentry. And that's kind of the mindset that I want is I work with people. People don't work for me. And the reason I do that is because I try to get on their level, understand what it is. And if you do that, you're going to have some kind of relationship. Why not let it just be friendship? And listen, when you're in the trenches and things are tough, you trust your friends. You trust the people you have relationships with. And for a while there in sales, things weren't that tough. And you could be a real whip cracker. But I think now things are tough. It's tough to be in sales. And you need someone that is empathetic, understanding, is going to listen, is going to help out, and is going to assume the best, isn't going to always greet you with negative, tough, raw energy. So that's kind of my philosophy anyway.
Well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, we see it time and time again where leaders surround themselves with people that they know. But I think we can also agree that they get themselves into trouble because when things don't go right, maybe they don't know how to turn and be that boss when they need to be that boss. Is there some type of enrollment that needs to go into this, like this conversation up front? If I'm working with you and I'm your friend, but like, do you have this conversation with me up front that says, "Hey, Matt, every once in a while, we might have to have a tough conversation that is not friends," if so, how does that sound?
I wouldn't say that I've ever done that up front, like in the beginning of the relationship. That might be a change I should make. But typically, when I need to have a tough conversation, I just call it out and I'm like, listen, you know, we're going to have a tough conversation today. And, as an employee of this company with a base salary, there's certain expectations that come with that. I need you to meet those expectations. Then there's a second part of your compensation that's commission based, where you make a lot of money, where it's your job to come up with your own expectations that need to meet or exceed mine and the company's. And then I hold you accountable to your own expectations.
Mhm.
And so, like, for example, there's rote work like updating the CRM. I'm paying you, let's say that you're a typical mid-market rep making 200K OTE. I'm paying you $100,000 a year. Unacceptable not to update your CRM. If you choose not to update your CRM, I should consider updating your base salary. And that is what I'm paying for with the base salary. Then the commissions is the stuff that you want to do. Like, how do you go above and beyond? Like, and then how do I hold you accountable to that? So I have them in the conversation, but ultimately, like, this is what it comes down to. And I haven't shared this a ton, Matt, but like, I used to be a pastor for like 15 years at a church, and my religious views and everything have changed a ton in that time. And I've evolved, but like, I sit down all the time with married couples, and we do marriage counseling. We'd sit down with young people. We do mentoring and things like that, and dozens of people in those years that I do that with. And ultimately, usually what I found out is most people know exactly what's wrong and they know exactly what to do about it. They're just scared to admit what's wrong and they don't have the confidence to do what they know.
Cool.
And so most situations in coaching and with a rep, it's just getting somebody comfortable enough, friendship, to say that I have this risk. I am worried. I'm scared about this. And it's not about being fired. It's because I'm going to fail or I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. Like, if they're afraid of getting fired, that's a totally different, that's not good, right? You want them to be afraid of their own, like, I can't do the level I want to, right? And then if you ask a rep what they should be doing, they usually will tell you the right thing because they know what to do. It's just giving them the confidence to do that. So these conversations where I'm holding people accountable don't have to be like this, rock on rock, iron on iron conversation. It's usually as simple as, Matt, like, hey, right now it doesn't seem like you're getting the results you want. I know you really want to crush this year. You're going for President's Club, you're getting married, so you want to pay for all this stuff. Like, help me understand, what do you think you're not doing right now? Well, I'm not prospecting. All right, great. I think I agree with those. I might add this one. What do you think? Okay, we'll negotiate that. All right. Now tell me, what do you need to do to fix that? And they just tell me. It's not like, listen, Matt, you're not hitting your pipeline numbers today. We're going to have a tough conversation about the activities you need to have. That's a horrible way to start a conversation. So why start it that way? Like, I can have the same exact conversation, but everything can be their idea, their motivation. And now I'm giving them confidence to do it and holding them accountable to do it. Or I can just force feed them everything. And guess what happens next time they're failing? I got to force feed them again. And now when I have 100 reps, you can't force feed 100 reps.
It's the difference between creating a self-sufficiency versus the learned helplessness. The learned helplessness is when you keep prescribing what they need to do.
Yes, I love that term, learned helplessness. I'm going to steal that.
I stole it from someone else. I can't remember who. The rule of three, Mark, right? The rule of three is the first time you borrow indefinitely something from somebody else, you give them credit. Like, hey, I got this, this quote from Mark. And the second time it's, hey, this person I've worked with. And the third time it's yours. You own it. So.
Yeah, hey, that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, if I summarize what you just said, because I think is powerful, is the people that are working with us, they're smart human beings.
Yeah.
And they know what's wrong, and they likely know at least some of the things that they need to do to get started. And you can augment and add on to that and course correct, but you want them to self-diagnose and come up with the idea. Is that fair?
That is fair. And I would say that people conflate two very different things. One is traits and the other one is skills. Traits are things like I work hard, I'm positive, I will go figure out stuff, right? A skill is like I know how to run a discovery call, I know how to overcome an objection. And what we do is we start to conflate those two things. And if you don't hire people with the right traits, you'll never teach them those traits. Traits are inborn. They have to be self-made. You can help somebody, but they have to decide to take on that trait and then do the hard work of making it into their core DNA. So like if you're not hiring people with the right traits, then it doesn't matter what the skill is. Once the skill starts to falter or the situation causes the skills not to pay off the way that they're used to, if they don't have the traits they needed, then they don't work. And so like I'm always looking for, does somebody work hard? And what I mean by that is it's at 6 p.m. I'm supposed to do 100 dials today and I've made 95. Do I just stop and go to dinner or do I make the last 5 because my job is to make 100? That's like the core definition of hard work to me, right? Are you curious? That's a trait. That's not a skill. You are just naturally curious or you're not. You can teach somebody to be, but again, they have to decide to have that enter into their personality and their DNA. And so I think that that's where we get in a lot of trouble as sales leaders is we don't hire for traits, we hire for skill. And then when we need the traits, they're not there. And we wonder why this person that has all this skill can't make it. I hire for traits and I'll teach skill. If somebody has the traits I want, I can teach them all the sales skills. That stuff's easy. I can never force someone to learn the traits because they have to agree to bring that into who they are as a person versus a skill is just, I can teach any 6th grader how to dribble with the right and left hand and do a crossover. I've done it thousands and thousands of times in all my time with my kids and youth sports and all that stuff. But you know what I could never do? I could never teach a kid to go home and practice it on their own. Yeah. Only the kids with the right traits did that.
So true. And yeah, the jobs, like you said, sales has gotten much more difficult. You can't start trying to coach and teach traits. It just takes way too long and it may or may not work. A lot harder to do. So Mark, can you talk a little bit about the execs hate work that you've done? I know this is probably a lot more than this, but the one post that you had that got thousands of comments and interactions was execs hate your demo, but you power through anyway, something like that. And it really caught my eye because I'm sure I know I've committed that sin over the years. And hopefully I've learned, but I see that mistake made time and time again. Can you talk a little bit about that execs hate umbrella term and, demos? Like why do we power through it, even though we even probably know people hate it?
So execs hate just kind of started on a whim, honestly. At one point at outreach, I said, I'm going to do 100 demos because I don't like our demo. And I'm going to find a good demo. I'm going to just copy it. And I can't remember what the time frame was, but like in 50 days or 100 days or something, I did 100 demos with a bunch of different companies and only had one demo that was interesting. All the rest were horrible. And then that's when I was like, I'm an executive and I hate these demos. And I felt like all my fellow executives hate them too. So that's where the execs hate came from. And then one of the first posts I did on that was the demo. I did several of them, like execs hate your long email, execs hate when you send them a case study, and all of these things that we do as reps, but actually execs hate when we do it, but we just think that they love it, right? Oh, execs love when you send your follow-up deck after a call. No, they don't. Execs love when I send them a call recording. Are you nuts? There's no exec that's listening to that call recording. Right. It's crazy. Why are you doing it then, right? All you're doing is flooding them with stuff that's, if you're not attracting somebody, you're repelling them. And those things aren't attracting it. Therefore, in my binary world, they're repelling. And I like to look at it as binary because it makes me make hard decisions about what to do, right? Nothing is neutral. It's either positive or negative. And so that's what exec tech came from, is my own experiences as an executive of what salespeople were doing to me, that I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this, right? And then the demo stuff is I think interesting thing is we teach people a lot of things, but we don't teach them how to demo. And I have a little saying, I think it's kind of dumb, but like but it's for sellers specifically. The first way they do something is how they do it forever. And what a salesperson does is they conflate success with comfort. So the first time they do it is how they get comfortable with it usually. Then once they're comfortable with it, they're like, my demo's awesome. And they don't look at success, they look at comfort level. And they conflate those two things. They're like, well, why are you good at it? Well, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're good at it. That just means that you have memorized a bad way of doing something. You're just comfortable doing it poorly. Right? It's like I'm a lawn guy. People don't edge their yard correctly on the sidewalks and their curb. And they're like, yeah, I'm a lawn guy. I love I'm a great edger. And I go over to their house and I'm like, no, you're not. You're a horrible edger. You just are comfortable with the way you do it. But the way you do is wrong. And it looks bad, right? But you're just comfortable. So that's what happens with demos is reps are comfortable because nobody taught them how to do it, or the way that they taught them was like very regimented. And we all know that like every buyer is a little bit different. And so I've come up with a much different way of doing demos that helps people be a little bit more in the moment, that personalizes it, that takes everything and shifts it down to just the most important three things, that creates a narrative. I look at demos like a movie. You can either have a dud or a summer blockbuster. But you know what a movie this summer blockbuster has? Has intrigue. It has a hero, has a villain, it has climax, it has a point of despair. And if you're not building those things into your demo, you're not thinking about it correctly, because a demo is a movie and it's, a 30-minute movie. And if you don't script it out the right way, it's going to be a dud.
And a demo, it's a movie, and it tells a story, right? And story, like, and it has those in the pieces of information that you talked about. So, Mark, I've also read where you wrote about this Goldilocks moment of sales, and and I think something along the lines of a lazy man's better is more, meaning right, like it's not working, so I guess I just need to do more of it. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that quote? I love the quote: "A lazy man's better is more."
Yeah. So we all know our sales is a numbers game, right? I think we all can agree with that to some extent. But the problem is everybody only looks at the low end. If I don't do enough stuff, it's bad. But there's actually an upper bounds. If I do more than this, if I do too much, it's bad. And what I mean by the lazy man's better is more is that most revenue leaders see that they can have a problem, they identify the problem, and typically the way they try to solve it is by doing more. So listen, I don't have enough pipeline. I see our connect rate stinks. So I'm going to try to maybe buy a new vendor or do something about that. But really what I need everybody to do is make more phone calls right now. And so what you did is you just said something that's not working, I'm going to double down on and do more of it, which actually decreases the effectiveness even more, much less the morale and the mindset of the team who's now wondering, like, what are we doing? Like, I'll give you a great example. My daughter was an SDR and they were doing a call blitz, which I love a good call blitz. And they got halfway through and they weren't getting the meetings. And what he said is, all right, we're going to go from 30 dials an hour to 60 dials an hour. And I want you to start dialing headquarter phone numbers. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that's a reaction. That's a horrible, lazy reaction to we're not getting results in the first half. Right. And now what I've done is I've prescribed something that's going to be even worse, because now everybody's going to be, running on overtime to try to get to this number. Plus they're calling a number that most people aren't even at anymore.
Right.
And so like, that's what I mean by the lazy man's better is more, is that if your instinct is to always counteract a problem by more activity, more accounts, we need more leads, you're just being lazy. I would say that that's what's led us to the situation we're in right now. There's GDPR, CCPA, DNC lists, huge spam filters. There's all of these things that are preventing us as salespeople from reaching out to the people that we want to help. But this is the ironic part, is we're actually being unhelpful to those people because we're reaching out so much and distracting them so much from their job. And the reason we're doing that is because we're doing things at such volume, but such low level quality, that that's the only way we can get the results that we want. And most teams even still aren't getting the results that they want. And so we have to change what we're doing. We have to go back to, and, Matt, I could be wrong here, but like, you look about my age and, we can probably remember days when there was no LinkedIn. There was no CRM. I mean, I used to have to go into an office, take a picture of the directory that was on the little black thing with the white letters that you stuck in the felt.
Yep.
And then I would go home and I would guess all their email addresses, and I'd call up the gatekeeper and ask what their phone numbers were. And that would take me all the time. And then I actually built my own lead system inside of Microsoft Access, a database that was
Yep.
kind of like a CRM way back in the day. And I would just be like, all right, today I'm just calling this type of person, and I could filter down my list and call everybody. But I did all the work to do that. Now, LinkedIn, Zoom Info, plus a sales engagement platform like Outreach or whatever, you can do all of that in a matter of minutes. And so what we've done is we stopped doing the hard work. Like, there's still investigative work to do. There's still research to do. It's just different. It's not finding the person now. It's finding out, like, what is Matt's specific issue? Because there's 5 levels of personalization that you can do in your outreach. Level 1 is the worst, which is, hey, I sell outreach. Do you have a pipeline problem? This is how we help A, B, and C. That's horrible. That's so based on you. The second level is industry. Hey, in your industry, we see this. The second is your role. Hey, as a person working in this industry with this role in marketing, this is what we see. The third or the fourth is on the company. Now we're getting somewhere. At your company, we see X, Y, and Z. And then the last is the person. Matt, I see about you. And when we get to that last one, which takes real work, then that's when we have real effectiveness. And when I started at Outreach, it took 7 to 9 touches to book a meeting. At the heyday at Outreach, say early or late teens of the 20s, that was about 15 touches. Post-COVID, it's gone up to 20 to 25 touches. And you run numbers, there's so many teams that cannot handle that level of activity as economically in order to sustain it to get the results that they want, much less the toll it takes on a human to make 100 cold calls and only get in touch with 2 or 3 people and maybe book 1 meeting. That's just too much negativity, if you will, and too much wasted work and time and effort. And it creates real cost and efficiency problems. And so we have to do the hard work to be better, not the lazy work of just doing more.
So I just want to make sure I understand that. I mean, I totally get the, how more is not the answer, but starting more with the person and doing that work are you saying is going to make it so that it takes fewer touches to actually get to somebody, so it becomes easier and you're not, really just, in that arena of rejection your entire existence as, let's say, an SDR?
So I'd be interested, Matt, like when you get an email in your inbox, my guess is you don't just hit delete. You scan almost everything that's in your inbox, as long as it doesn't look like a marketing automation. Like if you get like a text-based email, you sort of scan almost all of them, don't you, right?
Exactly. I spend pretty much the beginning of like some part early in my day and then some part later in my day just going through them on my phone and getting rid of the obvious ones.
Right.
And, so I'll get a sentence or two on my phone and I'll just go and just click, slide left or right or whatever it is and get rid of them, or I'll press it down and then I'll hit the button and then delete them all at once.
Yeah.
And I'm deleting 20 at a time,
right.
Multiple times a day. And then the ones that look like something I'll come back to, but the ones that say, hey, I just wanted to bump this up in your inbox, or we help company, it's like, So sorry for the long answer, but yeah, I scan them.
So I would say that that is a very typical behavior. It's like called pre-processing. Like before I process my email, I'm going to go get rid of the stuff that's obvious. Well, unfortunately, 90% of messaging is role, industry, or my product. But 90% of the results are company or person level personalization, right? That line right there is where below it, 90% happens. Above it, 90% of the results happen. So why don't we just move it up? And the reason is because it's hard, right? It's hard to personalize with company in person because you actually have to dig in and figure out something and have some business acumen in order to connect some dots. Like, for example, we recently looked at a company and found that the last 3 times they changed a C-level executive, their frontline managers attrited at a 37% rate, which is about 2x the average. Now, if you got an email in your inbox that said that, that's making it through the pre-processing. And now you're going to actually consider what to do with this. And if the rest of the email is good, you'll probably book a meeting, right? And that's where we need to get. And there is a fallacy that people aren't reading emails at all. And if they're not in your inbox, I agree. Like if they're going off to spam right away, like I agree that I'd never go to my spam folder and look through stuff. But every email in my inbox, I will scan, and I quickly, like you, determine whether I want to deal with this later or right now, or if I just want to archive it and be done with it. And so that's why it's so important to personalize on those top two tiers, because those top two tiers, and that's also why it's super important. Like you said, you're looking in the preview. Your first sentence can't be, "How are you doing today? Hey, I just wanted to bring this to your attention." It needs to get right to it. "Hey, Matt, did you know the last 3 times you changed your C-level at your company, 37% of your managers left? That's 2x the average." If you saw that as the first lines, you're clicking in that email. So that's what we need to get back to. And, that's the kind of stuff that, honestly, I read this book by Jeffrey Gitomer called The Little Red Book of Sales. Yeah. And he very much in that book makes the point of being creative and taking your time is such a big differentiator that it gets you outsized proportions for the investment, outsized return for the investment. And that's where that's where I spend my time, is in places where I can affect outsized return for the investment. And I very rarely spend a lot of time trying to get in touch with somebody and doing the research and connecting the dots where I don't get some kind of connection with them.
And so, is this kind of tie into customer led growth? Is that meaning like you're yeah, so you're looking at it at the customer in the individual level and really tailoring and personalizing the message to how can I help solve your problem at your company, what you're doing today?
No, customer-led growth is a post-sales methodology that says basically, especially for larger companies, the vast majority of your revenue growth comes from customers. And even for young companies, you can quickly put in motions and processes that cause your customers to grow and expand. And if you don't do that, you're just not going to be able to overcome churn and attrition and all that kind of stuff. And so customer-led growth is really about, how do we make sure that our customers become a growth engine by keeping and retaining them, and having a methodology to do that with. And it's funny, when I went to Catalyst, which is a customer success company, I got really thrown into the deep end of customer success. Right. And my first observation was, I went to look for a customer success methodology and there wasn't one. And we have, so how many do we have in sales? We have BANT, we have MedPick, we have Medic, we have, we have so many ways of doing things. Yeah. None of those ways exist on the post-sale side. And they're constantly trapped in the, hey, this account's on fire. They're watching 3 or 4 other accounts that are smoking, but they can't leave this one because it's on fire. By the time they get that one okay, then these 3 are on fire. And now all they're doing is chasing fire. And unfortunately, the only way to stop a forest fire is with a fire break. You got to let some trees burn, and you got a big swath to protect the people, that the trees and the areas of the forest you definitely don't want to burn. And so that's, most companies are unwilling to pause, let a few bad customers just burn, and spend time putting in place a system and a process that allows their customers to be an engine for their growth. So that's what customer-led growth is it was a call to revenue leaders to, change how they think about post-sales. Because right now, most post-sales people are just running around like a chicken with their head cut off from fire to fire.
For sure. And thanks for setting me straight there. Mark, I want to go back to something, we were talking a little bit before about the Goldilocks moment of sales, right? So why more is not the answer. But I also saw that you gave some advice which was to ignore the boss who says to do more. And so here's the context of my question here. Younger folks just getting started in sales, earlier in their career, and they get told to do, run faster, jump higher, do more. What's your advice to those folks? How do they say no?
Well, first of all, your company should provide you that base level of expected behavior. And again, your base salary goes to doing those activities. So I'm not saying don't do those. Let me be super clear. What I'm saying is when your boss comes to you and you're like, hey, we have a pipeline problem, or hey, we have a problem with this or whatever. And the answer is always, well, just do more. Well, are you making your phone calls? Yeah. Well, maybe you should just make some more. That's when you should stop a beat. Like, the company should be able to prescribe to you based on their conversion metrics and the needs of the company. What are the expected behaviors? They're paying you a base salary to do those. And then if those aren't delivering you the right product or the right results, it's because you don't have the right skills, in which case they just need to update your skills, or there's something else going on that the manager needs to figure out and help with. And so that's what I was more talking about, is like, if you go to your manager or leader for help and they're constantly telling you to do more, then you need to ignore them and go find somebody that can show you how to do better. Because there's so many leaders right now that are just not sharing how to do better, and better helps you get better results, not more. More can actually help you get better results, but there's a real cost to it. And the cost is, if I book 2 meetings with 100 calls and I do 200 calls, now I'm going to book 3 meetings, because I'm not going to have the same energy that I have for 100 calls with 200 calls. I'm not going to say that call the same quality of prospect. I'm not going to be as prepared for those 200 calls as I am for 100 calls. There's just so many reasons why you start to have that diminishing return after you do a certain level of activity. And that's that Goldilocks zone, is like, where can we do enough activity where we get maximized results per activity and not go over into the too hot or too cold part?
Yeah, because I mean, I've had conversations over the recent past and would ask a sales leader, well, on average, how many calls do your people make a week? And he or she'll say, well, we're not really outbound. We're not really making a lot of calls. I'm like, ballpark number. Yeah, 25 a week, 20, 25 a week. What do you say to that, leader?
Then I would say do more.
Yeah,
20 cold calls a week for an AE or an SDR is not acceptable. Now, I will say this, there's people that find different ways to success. So I used to have this SDR who was a brilliant email writer. And then we moved him over into social, and he was great at social, and he just wasn't good on the phone. And so we needed to figure out what to do with that person specifically. But I would say in general, though, there's a certain level of activity your company needs to expect from you that you need to do, that's based on the data and how much you need to do to get certain results. And doing more than that is fine. It's just, you need to make sure that you're optimizing for better once you're hitting the results, or once you're hitting the activity levels, not optimize for even more.
So Mark, cold calling is dead if you don't pick up the phone, and emailing is dead if you don't send emails.
Well, I didn't know where you're going, so the cold calling is dead, because that is by far the most reliable way to book meetings that there is on the planet. But yeah, if you don't pick up the phone enough, cold calling doesn't work. If you pick it up too much, it might still work because it's cold calling. But email and DMs don't work the same way for some weird reason.
I think the people who subscribe to the cold calling is dead are the same people who were looking for the 4-minute abs. We want to believe it's out there. We want to, because most people don't love making cold calls. The saying that I've been ingrained in me.
Well, they have something to sell,
Yeah.
or they have an agenda to push or whatever, or they just don't like cold calling, and they want to get rid of it. And the way that they're doing that is broadcasting to everybody. Cold calling is a super healthy thing. I mean, in college, I worked as a credit card telemarketer. I had some weird machine in the back, and this was like 1995, and I would have 100 conversations an hour. And so I learned how to deal with rejection, and that's really what cold calling is about, is how you deal with rejection. And so I'm very specific with my folks that make phone calls and cold calls. And I'm like, listen, let me tell you how I do it. I put Netflix on the TV, and I kick my heels up on the desk, and I just listen for somebody to say hello. And I just watch TV until when they answer the phone, I know I've done enough cold calls. I know what to do in order to get them to convert, how to do it. But cold calling is simple for me. I just get to catch up on Netflix shows while I do cold calls. And
there we go.
Yeah, just make it for you interesting. Some people need to be locked in and have the research and all this and all that. That's cool. Do it your way. But ultimately, there's a way to set it up that really works for you.
So your quote on LinkedIn is, I'm going to read it here so I don't mess it up. Fun is the fuel of hard work. And that seemed, what you just talked about, Netflix and cold calling, it seems to align with that quote, right? You can make it fun along the way. Maybe I'm making something that it's not, but what's the origin of that quote? Why is that on your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah. So I like to have fun. And when I'm not having fun, I don't work hard. It just comes down to that simple. When I'm stressed out, whatever it is, it doesn't make me work harder. What makes me work harder is having fun. And I always often use this illustration is, let's say you're at 70%, Matt, and you need to get to 100% of your quota. Like, how hard are you working to close that 30% gap? There's some level of work you'll do. If you're at 100% and you're going for 120% and all those accelerators and everything, how hard do you work? You work way harder. And so the reason is because you're already winning and you're having fun. The other one is you're losing and you're trying to get the winning. And so people always perform better when they're already winning. And so and I think one way to feel like you're winning is having fun. And as that started, I used to always tell my kids when we would go to practice, and then later when they were in junior high and high school, when I handed them off to other coaches, when they get out of the car, I'd be like, work hard, have fun, work hard, have fun. And that's what it comes down to. If you're working hard, you're feeling like you're contributing, and people who could contribute are happier, more satisfied, more fulfilled, all that stuff. And have fun is the fuel that it takes to work hard. So it takes those two things together. If you're just having fun, but you're not contributing, eventually you feel like, what am I doing? And you don't, or you're a very selfish person. If you're contributing, but you're not having fun, then it feels like a slog. And so combining those two, I think is where I that's the culture I like to create. Like, I'm safe to expose risk. I feel like, I don't never know quite what Mark's going to do on a call. He's going to do something corny or tell a joke or say some weird metaphor, right? And I just had a rep I talked to last week, actually an old leader who's going for her first VP of sales position. She's like, Mark, when I came to you, I always knew what I was going to get. Positive. How do we figure this out together? And let's celebrate when we figure it out. She's like, every other sales leader I've ever had, I don't know what I was going to get. If they were having a good day, then they were going to probably be good. If they were having a bad day, then I was going to get the stick. And for me, I just want to create an atmosphere where everybody feels like they're having fun and they like the job. And when that happens, then all the stuff that needs to get shared gets shared. The stuff that needs to get fixed usually gets fixed. The effort that you need usually gets put in. And so I would rather create an environment and a culture where those things happen automatically, even though it's a little bit against kind of what I want to do, versus having a culture where I have to force those things to happen because nobody's really having fun.
I think that's so powerful for leaders to hear. And I hope they're taking what you're saying to heart, because you don't have to be that, hard guy, like banging the table, yelling, tension in the air. We got to get to the number. Positive and predictable is what I heard you say. Positive and predictable.
Right. And just sometimes it's okay to be like that. Right. But it's just got to be very rare, and it has to be super important. And I can think of a few times where I blew up on people, but it's so meaningful when it happens so rarely. And if the general tenure is, let's have fun, let's work together, let's be positive, we're all in this together, let's just get through it and figure out what we need to do. It's just what works way better than you need to figure this out, you need to do your job, you aren't getting the results you want. And that's just very different, you versus we. My first VP of sales when I was a sales leader told me that. And he's like, Mark, you use I and we. He said, you use I all the time. I and me all the time. He's like, it's not you. You're not doing anything. It's your team. He's like, it's we or they. And that was a big language shift for me that also shifted a mindset. And so that's why I don't say when anybody works for me, I work with them. I never say I hit my number. I always say they hit their number or we hit their number. And the funny thing is the more you do that, the more you talk like that, actually, the more credit you get. And the people that say I and me are wanting credit, but they actually keep themselves from getting the most amount of credit because they don't talk the right way and give credit to the right people. I'm a big believer, every time somebody did something, I credit them, but then I get credit for allowing the idea as their leader, and I get credit for giving them credit. I get 2 times the credit instead of just 1 for taking the idea. So ultimately, it's self-serving, but change your language, change your mindset. As a leader, you're usually not doing the stuff that's making it happen. So just give that credit to other people.
I hope all the politicians out there are listening to this and adopting that same language too. But I doubt it. One question on that, I just want to dig in a little. Uh, what about when something goes wrong? So yeah, what about who is there? Is there an I there? Like so, hey, we hit the number, the team hit the number, but something went wrong. Is that a situation where you say I screwed up as the leader, or I missed something? It was my fault. Like, is that where you use me and I, or no?
When something good happens, it's we and they. If it's something bad happens, it's me and I.
Okay, okay. So there is language there.
Yeah. And I ultimately, like, what are you going to own? And see, ownership is control and power. And when you give ownership to someone else, then you don't have the power to control it. So if I say, well, listen, my AEs just aren't prospecting. Well, who did I just give all the power to? My AEs. Versus say, listen, I didn't lead the team right when we weren't doing enough prospecting. Who has the power now? It's my responsibility. I now have the power to change it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I always want to control what I can control, and I want to the things I need to control. I want to have the power to change, and my language determines where the power sits. And if I constantly use language that puts power in other people's hands for things that are supposed to be in my control, then I lose the ability to change them. So that's a really big thing for me is if I need power in that area to change it and to do the stuff, then I have to own the responsibility of it. And that's usually of negative things.
Yeah.
And but that's okay. My right-hand man at Outreach, his name was Nate Broom. He was spectacular at this. When we would do our weekly stuff, his weekly stuff would be 90% bad and only 10% good. But you know what that made me think? Nate knows everything going bad and he's got it all in control. And I've had other people that did 90% good and 10% bad. And what am I thinking? Well, it can't be all that good. And so like that's what ownership and control does and power does is when you take ownership, you get to have control over it. And when you have control over it, you can change it.
Awesome. As we wind this down, Mark, a couple of rapid fire questions for you around coaching. This is the Coach2Scale podcast. People that come on as guests care about leading, coaching, and developing others to be successful. People who listen to this want the same for their teams. Who's somebody who's coached you? Their coaching had a very positive impact on your career and who you are today.
I was really lucky at Outreach to have an executive coach, and the company provided that to me. She later come on as our SVP of culture or leadership, or I can't remember exactly what her title was, but she became an executive. Her name was Pamela Matson. And I had reached a point at Outreach where I'd hired a bunch of VPs, and they were in their area probably smarter and better than me. And to that point in Outreach, I'd always been like, well, I got the answer. I'll figure out the problem. I'll figure out what's going on, and then I'll execute the solution. But now I had people that could do that better than me in their specific areas. And so I kind of lost my sense of value. And Pamela came to me, she said, we need to redefine your sense of value. And so it took us about 6 weeks, but we worked on that. What my job was one, to communicate clearly my expectations, two, clearly communicate the timeline by which those expectations need to be met, and three, evaluate the mental model by which people are trying to meet those expectations. And so that was a huge unlock for me from going from a kind of in the weeds executive to like an executive managing, a huge board at a huge company with, $20+ million quarters that I had to hit every quarter. Is just really like, I can let my people do the work that they're supposed to do, but my job is to clearly say what they need to do, when they need to have it by. And then I look at what they've done and I'm like, all right, did you consider this? Did you talk to this person? Did you go over here? Like, how does this work? And I evaluate their mental model to make sure that they're solving problems in a way that meets kind of the way that I'd like problems to be solved in my org, which is, customer first, then company, then the team, and then you. And most people actually solve those in reverse. They solve it for themselves, then their team, then the company, then the customer. And that's why so many solutions don't have lasting power, is that you have to start with the customer and the company. The customers who pay you, the customers who pays the company, and the company who pays you. And if those two things aren't in good order, then guess what? Nothing that you do matters after that.
The customer pays the company and the company pays you. Love that. I'm stealing that from you, Mark. I'll give you, the rule of three, but I'll own it soon enough. Last real question here, Mark. Who's your favorite coach? So I'm thinking like, a name a lot of people may know, like that type of thing, like a celebrity coach. And what attribute about that? Like, what are some of the attributes about that person that make them a coach that you would think of?
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania, or I didn't grow up. I went to school in Pennsylvania, college, and then I lived here for most of my adult life, except for a couple years in Seattle. But and I'm on Western PA, so I'm a Steelers guy.
Well, I won't hold that against you.
I love Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin is a owner. He owns stuff. Mike Tomlin is a plain speaker. It's very difficult to misinterpret what he's saying. And from everything I've read, he is a master at the relationship with the players. And so like, if I could be those three things, that'd be great. But I don't like to do the sports analogies because they're so played out like that. So, but if you force me into like a coach, then I'm in sports, and that's the one that comes to mind with right off the bat.
Who's going to be the quarterback?
I think they're going to start with Russell Wilson. He's going to get booed off the field within the first 3 games, and then Justin Fields will take over, and we'll just have to live with it.
Should be interesting to watch. Mark, is there a question that, in this thread that I should have asked you, but I didn't?
I don't think so.
Well, listen, that's a great place to stop. You gave a ton of actionable ideas, gave people a different lens through which to look and solve some of the challenges that are coming their way left and right. Because as you said, sales is not getting easier. It's gotten harder, and we have to approach it in different ways. So I appreciate the energy and the ideas that you brought to the table today.
Great talking, Matt. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for investing your time with us. And for everybody out there watching and listening, thanks for doing so. If you like what we had to say, let us know what you like. Let us know what you'd like to see and hear more of. We want to bring ideas to you. We want to bring guests to you who provide you with the information that helps what you do and helps you do it easier, with less stress and with more joy. So thank you for listening and watching. And until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.